extent our nature is enlightened or unenlightened. Envision human figures living in an underground cave with a long entrance across the whole width of the cave. Learned from their childhood to have their legs and necks chained so that they cannot move and can only see before them, being prevented by the chains from turning their heads around. Above and behind them, a fire is blazing to distance. They see only their own shadows, which the fire throws on the opposite wall of the cave. How could they see anything but the shadows? They were never allowed to move their heads. Between the fire and the prisoners, there is a raised way, and a low wall goes along the way like the screen which puppet players have in front of them, over which they show the puppets. You see men passing along the wall, carrying all sorts of articles which they hold projected above the wall, statues of men and animals made of wood and stone and various materials. Of the objects which are being carried like men, they would only see the shadows. And if they were able to converse with one another, would they not suppose that they were naming what is actually happening? Which came from the wall. Would they not be sure to think when one of the passers-by spoke, the voice came from the passing shadows? To them, the truth would be literally nothing but the shadows, the image. And now look again and see what will naturally follow if one of the prisoners is released. At first, when he is liberated and compelled suddenly to stand up and turn his head round and look towards the light, all this would hurt him, and he would be much too dazzled to see distinctly those things whose shadows he'd seen before. And then conceive someone saying to him that what he saw before was an illusion. But that now, when he's approaching nearer to reality, his eyes turn toward more real existence, he has a clearer vision. What will be his reply? And you may further imagine that his instructor is pointing to the objects as they pass and requiring him to name them. Will he not be perplexed? Will he not think that the shadows which he formerly saw are truer than the objects which are now shown to him? And suppose once more that he is reluctantly dragged up a steep and rugged ascent and held fast until he is forced into the presence of his son himself. When he approaches the light, his eyes will be dazzled. He will not be able to see anything at all of what are now called realities. He will require to grow accustomed to the sight of the upper world. And first he will see the shadows of this. Next, the reflections of objects in the water, and then the objects themselves. Then he will gaze upon the stars and the spangled heavens, at the light of the moon. He will see the sky and the stars by night. Last of all, he will be able to see the sun. And not mere reflections of it in the water, but he will see the sun in its own proper place, and not in another. He will contemplate the sun as it is. He cannot then proceed to argue that it is the sun who gives the season and the years, and is the guardian of all that is in the visible world, and in a certain way the cause of all things which his fellows is accustomed to behold. To his fellow prisoners, do you not suppose that he would bless himself for the change? Pity them? And if they were in the habit of conferring honors among themselves on those who were the quickest to observe the passing shadows, and to remark which of them went before and which followed after, and which were together, and who were therefore best able to draw conclusions as to the future, do you think that he would care for such honors and glories, or envy the possessors of them? Would he not say with Homer, better to be the poor servant of a poor master, and to endure anything rather than think his baby and live after him? Imagine once more such a one coming suddenly out of the sun to be replaced in his old situation. Would he not be certain to have his eyes full of darkness? And if there were a contest of measuring the shadows, and he had to compete with the prisoners who had never moved out of the den, while his sight was still weak, and before his eyes had become steady, wouldn't they all laugh at him and say he had spoiled his eyesight by going up there? That it was better not to even think of a second? And if anyone tried to release another, lead him up to the light, let them only catch the offender, and they would put him to death. It is the task of the enlightened not only to ascend to learning and to see the good, but to be willing to descend again to those prisoners and to share their troubles and their honors, whether they are worth having or not. And this they must do, even with the prospect of death. They shall give of their help to one another, wherever each class is able to help the community.
That's an old video. I guess you could tell from the special effects. But I picked that one because it's narrated by Orson Welles, who is, well, he's Orson Welles, right? In any case, this is, as he says at the very beginning, if you didn't notice, this is from book 7 of the Republic. And I thought we'd start with the allegory of the cave. You could look up allegory of the cave. And you can find, as I showed, the Republic itself, the allegory of the cave. You can read through the Wikipedia. You could go on to ChatGPT, I think. I played with that the other day and asked ChatGPT what's the main points of the allegory of the cave and so on. The Platonic view of this, what Plato apparently wrote this for, was to indicate that people who thought what they were looking at in this world, the objects of everyday life and so on, one another, all of that, those are the shadows that he's talking about, because these are the corrupt, changing things, the ideas. So once the individual is released from the cave, that is, had a chance to talk with Socrates or Plato, and realize what they had been looking at all their life were just shadows by comparison to the ideas, which were the real. Right? And the sun, the metaphor for the good, which are the source is the source of the ideas, right? So from a Platonic point of view, the allegory is talking about becoming a philosopher and coming to agree with Plato that the real are the abstract ideas, not these shadows, and so on, right? Lots of other interpretations of the allegory of the cave, especially today thanks to TV. I'd like to point out that the TV could be interpreted as the shadows. You know, you spend your day watching the shadows on the wall. You know, but you have to get outside and you can see, you know, of course that's not Plato at all, because he didn't have a TV, and that wasn't an issue, you know, for the Greeks in 370 BC. Bless you. That's pretty interesting, right? But there's lots of other ways of interpreting this. Certainly, I think of it as a metaphor for a philosophy class, because before you take your philosophy class, you don't think about these weird questions. My job is to present the traditional questions that, you know, are supposed to make you think for yourself and find the solutions, not necessarily the solutions that everybody agrees with, but the solutions that you think are right, until the next time you think about it. And then you think, wait a minute, I was wrong about that. I should update my thinking, etc. But still, you end up coming to very different conclusions that are contrary to the kind of conclusions that people normally have about things. And then so when you come back to them and you explain to them, that's your obligation as the enlightened now. You come back and you tell your friends, no, you're thinking this, and no, it's not that, it's this. And they all think, you're weird, right? Because maybe you haven't presented the question in a way that they have to think about it for themselves. Instead, you just tell them the answer you came to, and they just think, boy, he's really gone off the deep end, right? And they're right, actually, you know, from the common sense point of view, probably, right? And hopefully they wouldn't actually kill you for it. Maybe in some countries they still would do that, but hopefully not here. They might ostracize you, they might not elect you mayor. You know, it depends on what your community and your relationship with everyone. But so, I'd like to emphasize that for Plato and the idealistic philosophy, the real are the ideas. How many of you had a chance to watch the 4-part YouTube videos on Aristotle's Lagoon? If you got to see it, one of the things the biologist that narrates it, I never even caught his name, but he says that what Aristotle thought he was looking at were the eidos, right? The eidos. Well, that's the idea, right? So the word they're using is eidos, or idea, literally. And so what they're talking about is the form. Aristotle's calling it the form of the object. So if he's looking at the cuttlefish and looking at the way the organs are and everything, he's trying to describe the eidos of the cuttlefish, which we would call, the organism, the system of the cuttlefish. And we're going to describe it as the physical form of the thing. But what Plato seems to have invented the concept of the idea as an existing abstract object that has no physical matter. Remember the invisible part of the creation, according to the creed, right? If you're familiar with that, right? So for Plato, the real are these abstract ideas which he believes are actually responsible for the way everything is structured in the material world, not because it physically changes the shape of it, but because and this is an interpretation of Plato, my own, really, that I've learned, right, is that we perceive the things because of our understanding of the abstract